This is Keep It Simple Phone Tech here, and we're bidding farewell to the iPhone X. We're saying bye-bye. So why am I bidding farewell to the iPhone X? Well, it's not because I don't love this phone. Let's say if I love it, why would I get rid of it? Well, that's just what I do. I keep a phone for a little while, I use it, I get the most out of it, at least for what I do with it anyways, which really isn't too much. I'm not a heavy user of smartphones, but I use it. I enjoy it, I see the qualities, I see the detriments, if you will, and then I move on to a different phone. Let me just briefly go over the qualities or highlights of this phone. Now, I do have an iPhone X review video that pretty much covers this in detail, and I'll leave that link in the description below. But basically, the screen is awesome, up to 1440p, has a terrific quality screen, one of the best on the market, has great cameras, dual cameras, on the back. One is zoom, the other is normal. I'm sure it has a great front-facing camera as well, but I'm not very big on, selfies, so I didn't really get a chance to mess with it. But, it's good. If you're a big selfie fan, you're probably not going to be disappointed with the quality of how this phone produces such. The phone is just the right size. It's not too big, it's not too small. Now, personally, I like larger phones than this. This phone has a 5.8-inch screen when you're looking at the screen diagonally, and it's mostly screen. It's got that notch there also. It's, the notch is pretty much hidden with this background that I have here, but you definitely notice the notch. You get to ignore it after a while. But the phone is just the right size. Now, it's 5.8-inch, but when you compare it to, say, an iPhone 8 Plus or 7 Plus, you'll see that this phone is actually smaller, even though the screen on the iPhone 8 Plus or 7 Plus is technically smaller at 5.5 inches. So the phone is going to be just the right size for most anyhow. Let me just kind of give you an idea here. Here's the Note 8. Let me put that in the shot and look at the size difference. Also in that sort of 18 by 9 or 2 by 1 format, the length versus the width, but this is a 6.3-inch screen versus the 5.8-inch screen, and just look how much larger. Anyways, I prefer phones of this size. I mean, yes, I have to handle it with two hands, whereas this one, I can have a fairly easy time handling it with one hand, but that's just my preference. The larger phone. In the year that I've had this phone, it runs just as smooth today as it did when it first came out of the box. Apple does an outstanding job with the processors that they put in these phones and sync and put everything together with the amount of memory that they tag along with the processor to make this thing run very smooth. So no problems a year later. Battery life. Battery life really hasn't seen too much of any sort of degradation, for lack of a better word. I mean, the battery life is still strong for what it is anyhow. If you're a heavy user, you'll be able to go for maybe half, 3/4 of a day before you have to plug it in and get a charge or turn on the battery saving mode to try to make it through all the day. If you're a moderate user, you'll be able to get through a day just fine. You probably have to top it off at night, overnight. Call quality, I mean, there's no issues with call quality. The calls sound great. Very rarely do I remember dropping any calls unless I was in a place where I just didn't have great service. This service is on Verizon in the US, and so pretty much great service all over the place. There are some spots that are not too great, but that's, we're talking about Verizon now. The iPhone X does a great job of maintaining cellular service. It also does a great job of maintaining Wi-Fi. So whatever connection that you've got on Wi-Fi, as long as it's strong, the iPhone X doesn't have any problems staying on that Wi-Fi connection and then performing as it should based on the strength of that connectivity. So again, if the phone is so great, if I love it, why am I getting rid of it? Well, again, it's time to move on to something different. You get these new smartphones in, and I'd like to try them out and try different things. Also, I will say this of iOS, as I'm transitioning away from the Apple smartphone, just for a little bit anyways, and going into exclusively Android for a while. I'll still have an iPad, so I'll still have connection to iOS. But iOS can be, I guess the best way I can put it is fantastically boring. It's fantastic in its simplicity. It's fantastic in its ease of use. It's fantastic in that you very rarely come across any glitches or problems or viruses or anything like that. At least my experience anyhow with iPhone over the years, very rarely. But at the same time, it can be a little boring. staid, bland, and that the icons are always just what they are, and you can't really move them around. The wallpapers, you can customize wallpapers a little bit, but you don't have the flexibility like you do with Android. And so that doesn't mean I again, dislike iOS. I love iOS. I love Apple. I love this phone. But sometimes you just want a little bit of variety. And getting away from this for a little while and going into Android and getting that variety will at least satisfy that need until it's time to come back to the tried and true iOS and the tried and true iPhone. Alright, in conclusion, farewell to the iPhone 10. This is a great phone. Just time to do something different. I think it's going for what, $899.99 right now on Apple's website. You maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Check it out for yourself. If you want to swipe and you want quality, you're not going to be disappointed with quote-unquote last year's model, because it's still going to run tremendous. It's going to be very smooth. It's going to be a wonderful experience for you. Oh, by the way, get a case. As beautiful as this phone looks, it is very slippery. Get a case if you're going to want to do that. If you want to get into the whole swiping thing versus the home button that you may be used to with iPhone, and you've got the money to shell out, give this a try. If you do want the greatest and you got that extra $100 or $200 or whatever that translates to in the payment plans that they have out there, get the X or the 10S or the 10S Max, even get the bigger one if you want the bigger phone. I can tell you that just between the 10S Max and the 10S, the only difference is size, at least from what I've seen. Everything else, all the guts basically are the same. If you want a bigger size or a smaller size, that's the only difference that you're looking at. It's a long conclusion anyway, so bye-bye to the iPhone 10. I hope maybe this is helpful to you in some way, shape, or form. Just kind of my take on my experience with the iPhone 10, briefly anyways. Thank you very much for watching. This is Keep It Simple Phone Tech.